Welcome to another edition of Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey is going to be Crown Royal Peach, and today we're going to go over some comics I picked up the other day, and the bulk of these are Cloak and Dagger. First thing we'll do is we'll have a little bit of our Crown. For those of you that haven't tried this Crown and Peach is pretty good. Typically I'll have it with some Coke, but it's one of those ones that I don't mind drinking straight. And I know that in some parts of the country it's hard to find this one. I know a couple of people, anytime they go into a liquor store, they kind of stock up on this one, especially if they're Crown and Coke fans. When this peach came out, I think it was a year or two ago, they would stock up and buy a case of it just to have, since it was so hard to find. And I love the smell of it too. Oh yeah, that is so good. So today's comic books is a comic book series that I remember fondly when I was younger. It was one of those that kind of spoke to me. Don't remember off the top of my head why, but it was just one that I kind of fell into. It's called Cloak and Dagger. There's actually two of the runs in this particular one. It's Cloak and Dagger that ran in the early 80s, and Cloak and Dagger Mutant Misadventures that I think was a second run a little bit later on. If I recall correctly, Cloak and Dagger first appeared in a Spider-Man comic. I want to say it was Peter Parker's Spider-Man, and I think it was the early 80s. And what was cool about this is Cloak and Dagger, it was an interesting thing for Marvel to do. So these two superheroes got their powers from actually drug lords. And what happened is they were runaways, got tricked into going into what they thought, if I recall correctly, was a shelter, and there was basically these drug lords that were illegally testing heroin and other drugs on runaways, and something ended up happening, and they ended up getting their powers. I always thought it was one of those things where I'm sure it's not something you'd see today, where you would have people getting superpowers from, taking drugs, right? So this first issue, and I think these are in the order that I had them in from when I picked them up. First issue is issue number 3, where you've got Spider-Man and Cloak and Dagger on the cover. Again, I always liked this one. It was kind of cool. They really didn't, early on, they didn't really fight villains, super villains. It was mostly what they were trying to do is fight drug lords or people who took advantage of runaways. And I kind of always thought that was pretty cool. I like this particular cover. You've got her out front. She always had a great uniform. And of course, anything with Spider-Man, you can't go wrong. The next issue is issue number 4. And this was a tie-in from Secret Wars 2. And I didn't even remember them being in Secret Wars. So when I saw this, I kind of thought it was cool, where it shows, I want to say it was Beyonder or Beholder. I think everybody's pronounced him different ways. But I do like this issue. Thought it was really cool. Issue number 5. As you can see, there's not a lot of super villains. This is them, fighting drug lords, helping runaways, and every now and then you'd see the New Mutants and stuff that would appear in their episodes. I always liked how they always have her in an action scene, and they've got him just kind of opening up to try and save the day. Issue number 6. As you can tell, their covers tend to have a theme. Issue number 7. I thought this one was cool, with the sharks at the bottom. Something about the sharks in this particular one, where they're throwing the bad guys just to get eaten by the sharks. And I guess the question is, for those that don't know, so Cloak, his cloak opens up into like a shadow of darkness, and it's not something you would want to be in. So the question is, if you had a choice of falling into shark-infested waters or getting enveloped in a cloak, what would you pick? Next issue is issue number 8. Again, they're fighting some drug lords, and I don't see Dagger in here, so now it makes me wonder what happened in this particular issue and where she's at. Issue number 10, where they're fighting actual supervillains. So for those who don't know, Doctor Doom. And I don't remember this particular issue, so I'm going to have to actually read this one. This is one that does not stand out at me. And, you know, for those that are watching this, I'd love to hear your comments. When you pick up comics that you just you got a nice little deal at the dollar comic store or dollar bin, do you read and open it up and smell the paper and look at it and look at the ink? Or do you just kind of get them, bag them, board them, and let them sit there? Unless it's something that I know is a high quality, high value comic, I end up reading all these and opening it up. It's just something about where it brings me back to childhood memories. Be curious to see what everybody else does. Issue number 15. This is just a cool cover. Then you'll see, it's actually the next one. So here is issue number 17. You've got it, Spider-Man would often appear in these. And I believe if I recall correctly, they would also guest appear in a lot of the different Spider-Man titles in the early to mid-'80s. Now, this was a second print run they did, and this might even be a third print run they did. It was the Mutant Misadventures of Dagger, or Cloak Dagger. And if I remember right, the New Mutants are in this one quite a bit. And if I recall correctly, and again, I didn't read this particular run all the way, but I think what happens is she ends up losing her sight in the very first issue. And part of it's dealing with her not being able to see. And my recollection is perked by that, by just kind of her knocking over the coffee. I think it is a great cover. Issue number 3. Not sure who these guys are that are fighting, but I'm definitely going to have to read this one because the cover is entertaining. Issue number 5. Obviously something happens to Cloak in this one. You see his cloak there, and it looks like whoever this mysterious woman is has part of his powers wrapping around her and choking Dagger. Issue number 4 of the Mutant Misadventures of Cloak and Dagger. Really like this cover. Something about this for some reason just kind of stands out. Issue number 7. Not sure who this person is. Issue number 9. And apparently the Avengers decide to step on this one. Yeah, that peach definitely... You could drink this and sip this straight if you wanted to. If you really wanted to, you could sip this and drink it straight. But I think it's one of those things that's better just with half ice. I do know somebody who will actually take some iced tea, like Lipton iced tea, and mix the Crown Royal peach with the Lipton iced tea. Issue number 10. With the X-Force stepping in. Issue number 11. Really like this cover. Issue number 12. Dr. Doom again. So yeah, I really don't remember them fighting Dr. Doom too much, but apparently there was a little bit in there. This would be a good poster. I really like how they've got Doom in the background on this one. Issue number 13. And then they've got this and Mr. Jip, or JIP. For some reason, I'm recalling that they tried to introduce, a recurring, and not, Dr. Doom isn't necessarily their primary supervillain, because initially they didn't have supervillains they fought. But for some reason, I'm thinking Mr. Jip was somebody that came in off and on through a lot of theirs. Really like this cover. And issue number 14, The Terror Begins. Now, if I recall correctly, on the Cloak and Dagger, so in Infinity Saga when they fought Thanos, I do know that there was something in there that I want to say Cloak had something to do with it. And then there is a TV show that started, I want to say 2018, and I only caught a few episodes of it. But it was one of those ones that I knew I would have to go back to. So I would be curious for viewers out there, if you watch the series, what your thoughts are on it. Do you remember the comic book Cloak and Dagger? Do you remember the different runs? Did you like it? Did you think it kind of stood out from some of the other comic books back in the time? And what were your thoughts on it? And also for those out there that are fans of any of the Crown Royal, and what do you guys think about these little bags that come with? I love having these bags that any of the Crown Royal comes in. Typically what I will do is I use those as dice bags or token bags for different games. So I've got a collection of those bags, but I'm always using them for one reason or another. Once again, I really appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this. If I said anything wrong, incorrect, please feel free to make a comment. Is there anything more that you would like to see with the coverage of just brief description of the different whiskeys that I'm trying or the different nerd stuff? And for those that so far you've seen me cover books, you've seen me cover comics, some games, which ones do you like the most, and what is some other stuff that you would like to see me try? I do know I had a person make a comment that they'd like me to open up some of the comic books themselves and kind of go through the panels. I am going to do that, so I'd really appreciate that. Any other suggestions I'd love to hear. I'm always wanting to make this a little bit better for everybody. And until next time, cheers.